Good morning, everyone. This is Khuong along with Jess Furman and Natalise. We are live with The Unlikely Journey, episode 6. This morning, we're going to talk about happiness. How do we achieve happiness? What do we do to maximize on that? So without further ado, let's jump right into that topic. Natalise, how was your weekend?
You know, my weekend was fairly tough. I've had a dog, a little long-haired Chihuahua for the last 15 years, and I actually had to let her go
I'm so
this
sorry.
weekend. So yeah, it was really, really tough. I consider her like my soulmate. You know, I told my husband that. I was like, she's my soulmate. So yeah, it was super tough, but you know, I think in some ways it sort of jolted me and reminded me of you know, what's important and what's important to me, you know, so.
Yeah, it's interesting. We're talking about happiness, and obviously your weekend was, I would imagine, the antithesis of happiness. But in a way, this strikes on the big topic that how do you get yourself out of it, Natalise? I know that's like, that's your soulmate, and it's only been a couple of days.
Yeah, that's a big deal.
Yeah, I think it was just I tried to power through it. I think like there's no easy way, but I think something that helped me was just gratitude, you know, and kind of going through sort of in my mind, sort of memories and thoughts that I was really grateful for and like experiences and, you know, um, yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I don't really have an answer for you that's full and complete, but the gratitude certainly helped me.
That sounds about right. I think the notion of gratitude is something that we don't take advantage of as often as we could, being in this day and age where things are moving so fast with social media and the ability to network with people so quickly. We can tend to reach out and connect in different ways just to, I don't know, fill a void. But I think there's something to be said about gratitude, like sitting in the moment and reflecting upon all the great things that are happening with us. And we can get that, without the connection with other people. So I think you're onto something there.
Mm,
Yeah, and I think also like allowing yourself to be sad, Natalie's like
yeah.
just kind of like gauging like when we spoke over the weekend, like just knowing you needed a minute, you know? Like not pushing
Yeah.
and trying to power through it necessarily, like giving yourself time to just be sad. I think that like letting yourself grieve is a really important.
Yeah. I mean I kind of knew it was going to happen, you know, fairly soon, that it was kind of right around the corner, and I actually started reading like articles on grief in some ways to like prepare. And there was actually one line from a therapist, and he said something like, you know, a lot of people try to avoid grief, but the only way to get through it is to, you know, to dive in, and to live with it, to sit with it, like how you're saying. And so I guess I just kind of gave myself the permission to just cry, you know, and lay in bed and cry. It is what it is, you know.
I was listening to a podcast this weekend with Arthur Brooks, and he's a gentleman that has the Art of Happiness podcast, and it's a really compelling episode. And they were talking about happiness and how we end up moving kind of further away from happiness with all of the things that we want to achieve in life. So they had this idea, there was this reverse bucket list, meaning that instead of writing down everything you want to achieve in life and only feeling accomplished when you achieve those things, they're talking about a reversal of that. Let's write everything down and let's start removing things and see how many things we can eliminate from the bucket list and remeasure, recalibrate your happiness with simplicity. I don't know. I wanted to get you guys' thoughts on that.
Yeah, it sort of reminds me of this idea that doing something for pleasure really means that there's no goal. So a bucket list in and of itself is like a list of goals. Right? So in some ways it's like if you're removing the bucket list altogether, or sort of that idea, and you're just doing things for the pure journey of it, I guess, the process, the experience in and of itself, then you can actually experience the joy from it.
Right.
That's powerful insight. I mean, Jess, you and I were talking earlier this morning, and you said that this weekend was particularly enjoyable for you because you had no agenda. You were out with friends, you spent some time with your nephew. How was that for you? I mean, was that out of the norm? Did it feel strange? Did you have anxiety being that you're, such a scheduled person of all the people that I know?
Well, yeah, I had like chunks of time that I'd scheduled for because I am a scheduler, but I'd set aside like, okay, I'm going to show up and be present from 10:30, in the morning on Saturday until, he goes to bed. My nephew goes to bed, around 8:30. And I guess yeah, within the context of that, like I just showed up and sat down and we played Legos and, then we jumped around the trampoline out back and then like we just, played games and um yeah, it was interesting, like within the context of that, to just like feel like I had the freedom to not have to be checking in on, on work stuff, and yeah, and I think yeah, I did mention this morning, like we were chatting, like I still feel a little bit of anxiety around that much time. It's just hard. Like I always feel like there's so much to be done, and I'm trying to get better at giving myself a day or two off here and there when I can, and it doesn't necessarily have to be. I think certain days of the week are easier because there's just less stuff that piles up. But yeah, I had fun, and I'm glad I took the break this weekend. But yeah, there's always a little bit of guilt. I don't know if you guys feel that. There's always just so much more work that could be done. I have a billion, side projects and things that I'm interested in learning and educating myself on. And, if I have a particularly busy week, it's sometimes or usually overflows into the weekend. So, it's like I feel like I'm caught up between like knowing I need to decompress and take a break, but then also feeling like I'm not. I'm. It's like FOMO. It's like work FOMO.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I can relate to that. It reminds me of what Nina said during the last podcast episode. She was like, "I'm a horrible vacationer." Like, I know what she means by that. I'm a horrible staycationer. I can't even be here watching Netflix for more than 20 minutes before my mind starts racing off to like a project. So, um, but here's a paradox. Why do we work so hard to, accomplish things, right? I mean, when we accomplish these things, don't we, I mean, isn't the end goal to have more happiness or more time to be happy? But then when we decompress and make that time, all of a sudden we're anxious. There's something very wrong about that.
Do you guys ever feel like this? Like I don't hate what I do. Like I love working in entertainment. I mean, love hate certain things I do. I love everything that I do in it, but for the most part, like I feel like usually typically pretty energized, and it's a little bit of the Wild West, and I wonder if that's part of it because I actually do have some friends who really just genuinely look at their work as like just a means to an end, and then they really cram in their fun around that because their job is just their job.
But let me ask you this, Jess. So those people who you've talked to, do they feel guilty when they're having fun? I would guess that that's no.
No, they don't
Yeah.
because they've earned it. They feel like they've
That's
earned
right.
their
Yeah.
fun. Whereas I don't know that I've earned my fun because I don't feel like I necessarily am tortured on a daily basis, which is wonderful. I mean, there's torturous elements of what I do and what I'm sure we all have to deal with, being in charge of a bunch of things. But yeah, they feel like they've earned their fun, like it's their time off. And I guess when you're your own boss to a large degree, like, I do work for a music group, but like I run my own division and I have a lot of freedom and, and I still run my custom house that I own. So it's like, just I am my own boss to a certain degree. It's hard to, I think, feel like I earned this time off. Like, I don't know. Do you guys?
No, I was going to say I feel guilty too, right? Like, because I feel like if I'm spending so much time playing, let's say, then this is time that I could be investing in, what I'm doing. So it's like I'm paying for it. It's an opportunity cost. But I'm gonna give you a flip side because of what happened this weekend. So when I have reflected, I've tried to sort of parse out, like, when I'm by myself, like I found especially in the last 48 hours, I've tried to recall as many memories as I possibly can. And it's like, that's what is valuable to me, like right now. And so I'm
Wow.
feeling almost on the flip side guilty that I didn't make more of those moments so that I could recall them now. So it's almost like, right now, like you're in it, like we're in it, like in terms of our professional careers, and like we're trying to get
Mm.
somewhere, we're trying to make big things happen. But I think, this weekend has shifted in some ways for me, like, okay, you're gonna want those memories. You're gonna want to create them. So it's like you got to invest in creating those moments too, because one day you're gonna want to recall them.
This is hard because I think the X variable is that to a large extent, I believe each of us, we like what we do. So
Yeah.
part of our moments is being really great at what we enjoy doing. So that's where it gets a little bit like paradoxical here. Because if I hated what I did, I would be like, yeah, let's call this a 9 to 5. I can't wait to get to the bars and party and all that stuff. But there's a part of me, I can be on vacation and I'd be like, oh gosh, it's nice out here on the beach and I could be swimming and all that stuff. But man, wouldn't it be cool to like, write the next pitch deck because I love writing pitch decks, you know? So I don't know. It's like it's so difficult because for people like us, I don't think that there is a clear line between I don't know, like time off versus. I mean, is time off really time off?
No.
Well, it's not, because there's no such thing as, like, if you're giving yourself time off, like, you know what I mean? Like, I have so much flexibility with what I do. It's just, I'm fortunate that it's like results driven, right? So I'm managing my own time. So like time off is a very difficult concept, I think. And I mean, I guess what I'm thinking about as you guys are talking, I've been thinking, it kind of sparked this idea of like, well, what do I do that I don't regret when I spend time? Like, I don't regret a single moment I spend with my nephew, even if it's like putting Legos together or putting Legos away. Like, I don't regret like any of that time. And maybe that's just it as well. As like, I think maybe some of the traditional things that people do to have fun, I don't find fun. Maybe I'm just, maybe
Ah,
there's something wrong with me, but like, I don't know. Like for me, yeah, like what, maybe it is the reverse engineer. Like what do I do with my time that I don't find regrettable or feel guilty over? Like, what about you guys? Like, what do you guys do with your time where you don't then afterwards go, oh, I wish I hadn't done that?
gosh, like memories, like I don't know. Some of my most cherished memories are like work related.
Interesting.
Okay.
Do they involve
they
people though?
they do involve people.
Mm-hmm.
They do involve people. So I like people,
Uh-huh.
but I also want to say that the work that I do for the most part is very creative.
Hmm.
It's not like I'm on the assembly line, like putting widgets together. I'm like thinking about creating things and building things from scratch or expanding upon existing systems. Those things are very they are fun for me. But I have heard in the past from friends and family members that they have a hard time vacationing with me because
Mm.
I mean, don't get me wrong, like I can party hard with the best of them, but there is definitely like a certain threshold where like I can't like party like the professional partiers, like going like 10 days straight or whatever, right? Like by day 3, I'm going to be like, okay, I'll be back. I need to go, check on my computer or check on a couple of things. I mean, that's just so ingrained in my life. And by the way, this whole thing goes back to the topic of happiness. So, I mean, I don't know. I am happy working.
Hmm.
I mean, that is I know that's out of the norm for a lot of people because I think for most people there is a clear delineation between work and play. And for me, a lot of my playground is work embedded. So I don't know.
How do you guys define, like, because I caught myself saying this recently when people asked about how much I work, or like, oh, you're always working, and I'm like, maybe it's not work then. I feel like work, it is work, but I guess it's work in the classic sense that like it's, I guess it's like a career, right? As opposed to work, because it doesn't. A lot of times, what I do doesn't feel like work. Like there are elements of what I do that feel like work. But it's the same. Me doing invoicing or account stuff. On the money side of the job, it's not as, or contracts that aren't as fun or exciting to me is the same as doing laundry. Like it feels the same. Like they're on par with things I would like to not be doing with my time. but work to me feels like things I don't want to be doing with my time. I feel like a lot of people do link work with career, and my career doesn't feel like work to me.
How do you feel about that? Like the invoicing stuff, the mundane stuff. Well, I guess you outsource that, right, Jess? Like someone else does it. You don't have to necessarily do that.
I mean, I have to oversee it, so it's not, I mean, in a perfect planet, we would have that taken care of. But because of, most of what I'm doing is licensing, it's really difficult to just hand it all over because it has to do with the billing is really linked to like options that we negotiate for licenses and things like that. So I have to oversee everything to make sure that the invoices match the contract I negotiated. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't mind it. It's just, it feels like the homework. Even that, I'm like, oh, it's the homework portion of what I do. But work to me is like cleaning my bathrooms, work. Getting a car wash, work.
Okay.
Like just things like that, like laundry, work. I don't know.
What about cooking?
It depends. If I'm hungry, it's work. If it's enjoyable, like, I have time and I'm just relaxing and making something fun, it doesn't feel like work. And I think that maybe that's what this is. Like maybe people like us have to define work differently in terms of happiness and off time, right?
I mean, are we lucky then that we get to view and experience our work as part of delight or joy? Or are we just all twisted in the head?
I mean, I'll bring up the Tony Robbins thing again. We all know that I love Tony Robbins. But he talks a lot about the science of achievement versus the art of fulfillment, and how achieving things is a science, but being fulfilled in what you do is an art. And I think that kind of like for me makes it a little bit like I'm really good at the science of achievement. The art of fulfillment, I think, is something I struggle with consistently.
Yeah, that's a really good point because I do find myself constantly searching to fill a void. No matter, like, I've done some pretty amazing things in my life, but even still, I'm like, I want more. So, yeah. What about you, Natalise? What are you thinking? Like, what is your mental picture of a joyous state?
Yeah, joy. Okay, the word joy I think is hard for me because because
Okay, let's talk about that.
Oh my God.
like okay, it's hard for me because it's a really hard question. Like when someone's like, like how do you experience joy? I'm like, like I feel like I'm so focused on this achievement, right? Like, and getting things done. I'm not focused on joy. Joy requires a certain calmness and relaxation so that you can absorb joy. Because if you're always like anxious or doing something and like focused on, you're not allowing, there's almost like, there's like walls up, like there's no way that you can experience joy. So for me, it's like my happy place is like, going into nature. Like I love Big Sur. It's like my favorite place, right? Like I love sitting by like dramatic oceans. Like I don't like going to the beach, but I like sitting on like cliffside. Like, and it's like,
You mean like by yourself or like with other people?
either.
Okay.
But, I find a lot of joy from that. Actually, like I really love Iceland for this reason, because if you go to Iceland, everything is like super extreme. Like they tell you not to go near the ocean because it could like, the waves are so powerful. But I like in some ways being in big nature and feeling small. For me, that is joy. But I'm trying to figure out how to bring, joy on a day to day.
Okay, I'm gonna go deep with you.
Okay.
Imagine you're like in big nature.
Yeah.
How long can you last there before you have to like jump back on a plane and get back to work?
I don't know because I've never tested that. I mean, even when I'm trying to remember, even when I went to Iceland, I was working. Like it was I
Okay.
would work every day, like when I
Okay.
got back
Well,
to my room or whatever.
okay. Okay. I think people listening to this podcast, they're gonna think that we're all screwed up, the three of us.
I mean, I remember when I was I had a good flow when I was in Budapest visiting a friend, and I had figured out like what hours. I had a good team. I had a good business partner at the time on a few projects, and and I figured out what hours I needed to touch base on the projects. We just happened to have a couple projects that I didn't feel like, I felt like some of them I really had to be heavy handed on, especially if I'm doing the creative part too. But it was just happened to be this magical couple of weeks where I was able to be on this trip, and I worked every day, but it was just that with the time difference, I was like, I had a whole morning a day, and then I would pop into an internet cafe like around the siesta time. That was like the money time to like reach back into like the US with my tentacles. And then like I could go out to dinner with friends and explore the city the next day. And that to me felt kind of cool, like locking in on a time where I could like explore and just be like a traveler, and like kind of like what Natalise was saying about like sitting on the edge of a cliff. Like for me, that's like exploring a city and going to a museum and spending hours and hours and hours reading because I'm a nerd. Like I don't, yeah. For me, having that balance like felt cool. I would, again, I think it's hard because when you do what we do, like when it's working well, it's working well. But when it's not, the buck stops with us, right? We're in charge. So if there's a breakdown in a process of any of our team members, or there's a conflict, or there's a big project that requires a little more hand holding, I think for me, that's when I feel like I can't do those things as well with the balance and the work-life balance at that level.
Are you guys finding yourself feeling like the glass is half full or the glass is half empty when it comes to experiencing joy?
It's interesting that you frame the question half full or half empty.
Hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
because I don't know if I even think about it that way.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I have to agree. I think I'm more grab the moments I can grab. Like I will say, one of the gifts of this weekend for me was I went back to I went to the nail salon. It's gonna sound so trite, but I just took a chance and went in when they first opened that they could do a walk-in for me, and they've been closed for over a year, and it's this like neighborhood place, hole in the wall. And the woman remembered me, and she remembered my name, and she was like, Jesse, why didn't you text me? Why haven't you been? And I'm like, whoa, like, and I brought my friend Nina, and like we were doing our Nina, who we did the podcast with recently, the interview, and it was so funny. Like we caught up over the course. It was like these just I forgot how much I love the woman, her name is Judy, who does my nails. Like, I forgot that, like, I've been going to her for years. I haven't seen her in a year. And, like, I feel like with the pandemic, I don't know if you guys feel this, like, I feel like a lot of my joy is actually experiences with people. And I think that I just kind of, like I think that like in trying to just make the best out of this whole situation, I feel like being isolated as someone who's outgoing and likes people, I forgot that it's not just the friends I don't see or I haven't seen, but it's also like little people. It's like it's little interactions with people like that, right? Like the places I would frequent that like I know their names and their kids' names, and like it's not necessarily my best friend who I would call and like over to their house and hang out, but there's a whole community of people that I have around me, like I've been craving and missing. So I do feel like this weekend being able to be like I'm doubly vaxxed and I could go out more, and other people are feeling more optimistic, and like the restaurants are open. I don't know. I think there's a part of me where like if it is like the joy, for me, my joy is kind of like rebounding as I'm also trying to remind myself, like similar to what Natalie said, like I'm reminding myself it's these memories, like it's these things that are important to me. Like for me, my experience this weekend was I'm remembering it's people, and it's not just like my close friends. It's like actually the people that like are all around me in my community and my day-to-day life that like might just be vendors and someone that pours my coffee. Like I don't know, it's just like that interaction to me feels like a joyous place, and I don't have to overthink it. It just happens, and I've been missing that, and I didn't remember how much I've been missing that till the last couple of days.
Yeah, something that just occurred to me is like, going back to this conversation of like, how do we define work? How do we define play? And you know, how do we feel when we're doing one or the other? And it's like, let's scratch all of that, right? Like, I think like life is just time. And it's like, how do we allocate our time in a meaningful way?
Right.
And it's like, it's awesome. I think like, I don't think we should feel like shameful for, allocating a lot of our time to work because it's meaningful to us. Right. But
Yeah,
like,
thank you for saying that because I've been shamed for that for a long time.
yeah,
I just feel like nobody gets me, but I really like what I do. Why are people telling me to stop?
yeah. I mean,
So yeah, no, thank you
it
for saying
brings
that.
meaning to you. Right. And I think like, but I think where we just need, I think, people like us and people on the other side too, right? Like people who just want play. I think the key is balance, and only we can define what balance means to us. And so, for me, it's like, okay, well, yes, work is a large part of that. Hanging out with my dog was a large part of that. Hang out with my family, of course, and friends, but it's like just like how you're talking about like these little experiences, like they all make up part of our time. It's like it's like they're like tokens, and we're spending our tokens, and we don't have like unlimited tokens.
Yeah, that's fair.
Well, I was thinking if there was a very defined line that is drawn, one side of that line is your work, your startup, your music, your production, your creativity, and then the other side was like a one-way ticket to like Maui, but you would not have access to any of that stuff. Like there's no computer, there's no cell phone. Well, it's two questions. One, can you cross that line knowing that you're not going to have these things? And then the second question is the moment you cross that line, how many days do you give yourself before you jump back to the other side?
Let me question. So is a Maui trip with someone or by yourself?
Let's just say it's by yourself, but there are people on the island, so you can meet people and stuff, but you're by yourself. And you have to be honest. There's no right or wrong answer, but I'm just curious what you guys are thinking. I'll tell you after I hear from you all.
I mean, Maui's a bad one for me. I would be in hell. I do not like beach vacations. Like, I don't feel stimulated by, I'm like, I love the idea of the ocean. I'm not a beach person. So I'm a city person. Like, if you're like, I'm going to drop you in, Rome or Greece and like go with no devices, that would interest me. But yeah, that's like a Gilligan's Island scenario for me, where I would just try to survive it until someone rescued me.
Like 98% of the world would love to be in Maui, except for you. Yeah. Okay. Well, let's drop you off in Barcelona and remove all your devices, and you have no connection to that creative work side of Jess. How long are you going to be in Barcelona before you like call Rescue 911 and be like, get me the hell out of here?
Am I running out of money?
Let's just assume that money isn't an issue.
And that my position will be there and my company will be okay no matter how much time I spend.
Yes.
Okay. You'll never see me again.
Okay. So you're telling me you're willing to give up all of your creative stuff, all of your work stuff to be in Barcelona?
Sure. I mean, if I'm learning and I'm like deep nerding about history, sure.
Okay. So we have just stripped your identity from Sound Revolver Jess, and you're good. You're good with that.
Yeah.
This is it. You're basically disappearing. You're gone. You're ghosted.
Yeah, I mean, my over the hill afterlife fantasy is like to like if money were no object, I would be like an anthropologist, like Indiana Jones traveling around the world, just like like that's my dream. Like drop me in a city with ancient history. Bye.
Okay, I like that.
That's amazing. I never knew that about you.
Yeah. I never knew that.
Oh my God,
I love knowing that.
So Jess, the book that I got you, there's some obscure places in there you got to visit.
Oh, I know. That's why I have it out on my couch. Like I'm actually gonna be writing in the margins. Like I'm gonna like I looked into it and they have this like Steve got me this Atlas Obscura book, and basically they do actually these like trips too, where like you can kind of like around finding these different wonders of the world. But yeah, I'm a deep nerd. Like anytime I've gone to these cities, I like going by myself because I when I tell you I spend hours in museums, like I was in Checkpoint Charlie for like 7 hours. Like there was not a shred of text I did not read in that museum. I was so happy to do it, but I was there by myself. I had friends that I was staying at their place, but they were busy, so I could spend 10 hours at that kind of museum. And I've done that all over the world.
Okay, your answer is actually quite shocking to me, but this is good. Natalise, I'll get back to you, Jess. What's your answer, Natalise? Your thing, you can't go to Barcelona. You're a Maui girl, so Maui.
No. But I was gonna say no. I can't do Maui either because like I said, I don't like beaches, and like Maui nature is beautiful, but it's like not big enough. It's not big enough. Big nature.
What if we drop you off in like coast of Australia or something?
Yeah, like New Zealand, Iceland, Antarctica. Like
okay, you get to pick one.
10 days.
10 days.
And then
Okay,
10 days.
that's a lot different than disappearing.
Yeah, 10 days, and I'd want to come back.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think I'm gonna be a 10-day person as well, to be honest with you. Jess, I don't think that I could disappear. I mean, gosh, Jess, you know what? I think you're a lot more evolved in the way that you're thinking about, like, you've already, like, dude, you've crossed over. You're already on the other side. You basically said that, look, I would drop all of this shit to be in Barcelona and be like a major nerd. That's incredible.
Well, but that's also like, but maybe the question is different. I'm going to pose it back to you guys. Money is no object. You and your families are taken care of. You have all the money you could ever possibly need. And whatever companies you started are running fully at their capacity. Like, what would you guys do?
I still think that I would want to create something. I don't think that I mean, honestly, I would be deathly afraid. The fear really comes from, like, being inoperable. Like, I really put a lot of stake in my mind working in that capacity, and it really just, that makes me happy. It really does.
Yeah, I mean, that's great. That's awesome. So I would stay at the most fabulous like hotels and eat like the best food ever, and that's awesome. But I think we also said, the premise of this was you're going by yourself,
You're
and
going by yourself,
which is
yeah.
awesome. But I think for me, I'd eventually want to see people like who I love. So I think that's and certainly like the the making things happen. Um, I think I would miss that part too, like sort of the challenge
Yeah,
of life. Even though it sucks sometimes, it's still like a thrill.
I agree. Well, this
Maybe
is
we're
gonna,
just masochists.
I think that's what it is. And yeah, we're gonna just scare the shit out of our listeners with this episode. My God. Well, with that being said, I do want to leave on a positive note. I think this is a question better left unanswered. It's the question that matters more than the answer. And I want our listeners to really ponder upon that. Like, what is a good balance between work and play? We'll think about that. So, with that being said, want to wish everyone a great Monday. Hey, Jess and Natalise, this was a great topic. You guys have me a little bit freaked out with the way that I'm thinking about this. So I'm going to need a couple of days to reconcile. But thanks, guys, for a wonderful podcast. We'll see everyone else, and we'll see you guys on the next episode. That will be episode 7. Have a wonderful day, guys.
Thanks,
Peace.
guys.